You're tuned into the Zelos podcast, and I'm Rocky Snyder, your host. This week I've got Theron Enns in the house. He is from Real Salt Lake, a Major League Soccer team out of Utah. Senior Director of Athlete Health and Performance. We're going to get right into a deep conversation all about what it's like to manage a huge team of professionals for Major League Soccer. Be sure to subscribe, follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. Here we go. I gotta admit, I honestly thought I was going to hear an Australian or British accent.
No, not at all. I'm as American as you get. Born in Chicago, raised in the Midwest, Southern California, and I've been kind of everywhere since then. So
No kidding.
yeah.
Did you grow up with soccer?
So yeah, I mean, I think like most kids, you start with soccer, right? It's an easy sport. Parents see it as a safe thing. I played probably in, middle grade schools when I started. My athletic ability, Rocky, probably left me before I was born, so it was never going to be a long-term career. But I mean, like any other young guy growing up, you love sports, you want to be around it, and I think that's kind of how I gravitated into this business. But soccer's always had a place in my heart, and yeah, I mean, obviously I've been in soccer a long time now. I did start out in a couple other sports right out of school, but yeah, I've been very, very fortunate. I'm not going to lie. I mean, you know how brutal this business can be with people getting churned over and eaten up. And I've been fortunate to be at a couple clubs, but long term, 9 years in Colorado, 10 in Houston, and now this is my sixth season here. So I'm pretty fortunate.
And what were you doing in Southern California? You mentioned that.
Yeah, so my dad moved there for a job when it was, I think, fourth grade. We moved from Iowa to the Inland Empire, so like Altaloma, which is now like Rancho Cucamonga. We lived there from like fourth grade through high school, and then I did my undergrad down at Point Loma in San Diego.
No kidding.
Yeah, small little church school down there, little NAIA school, which is now I think Division II NCAA. But yeah, that's where I kind of grew up. I still have family down there. But I haven't lived there since, I graduated in 1996. So it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Okay. So we're within probably 10 years of one another. Because when I grew up just north of Boston. And although we did have we had a high school team that was a soccer team. But there wasn't really, they were just getting started by the time I was in high school with youth recreational soccer.
Yep.
There were no travel teams or anything like that. So unfortunately, it wasn't something that I was raised with.
No,
and
you're right.
It wasn't until kids of my own, like when my daughter, I think, was 5, she's now 20. So 15 years of coaching soccer, because that's what dads do, right? Or moms do too.
Yep.
You just jump in and start coaching. And then FIFA and US soccer started banding together and licensing coaches, and been doing it ever since for the most part. So it's been great. So
yeah.
Give me a rundown of how you got involved. You mentioned a couple other sports, but yeah, how did you navigate your way into the world of soccer, especially with athletic training and where you are now with Real Salt Lake?
Yeah, so obviously my background's an athletic trainer. I love sports. I loved medicine. Originally thought I was going to be pre-med in college, and I was going to do that. Decided it was a little too sciencey for me. I also thought, doctors, they're just kind of in an office all day, and then they go to a game on the weekend. I want to be around the team and around the athletes on a regular basis. So Point Loma had an athletic training program, so I jumped right into it head first my freshman year. Back then, credentialing was a little bit different. You could do an internship program. So I was compiling hours of spending time with all the different sports there, which was great. They gave you that opportunity early on. I knew it's what I wanted to do for a career, so I went and got my master's from an accredited program at Western Michigan. And then from there, I had this burning desire to be in Division I sports. So I took probably one of the worst paying jobs I've ever had, and went to Villanova kind of like a grad student, maybe $1,000 a month back then. But I got to do men's and women's soccer, and then indoor and outdoor track. And I'd always loved soccer. It was fun. It was great. I enjoyed the sport. But I was presented with an opportunity from a coworker there to get into professional sports. He asked me one day what I wanted to do, and I said, pro sports or D1, college. That's my goal. He's like, oh, you want to do pro sports? Give me your resume. I go, well, what for? He goes, just give it to me. And Jeff didn't really do a lot of favors. He was the longtime basketball trainer at Villanova. And I don't know what it is, but it sparked something, and he sent it off to the New York Jets where he had a connection, and got me in with them. And I did a seasonal internship in the NFL, and it really opened my eyes to what professional sports can be like for an athletic trainer, and it's really what I wanted to do. And so I set my sights on, I'm staying in pro sports as long as I can, and left that year-long internship and ended up getting a job in Major League Soccer early on in the league. It was like its third or fourth year back in '99 as a equipment manager and assistant athletic trainer. So it was my way to get my foot in the door. Didn't really want to be the equipment guy, but when you're young and you're hungry, you take some opportunities. And I figured it was a young burgeoning league, and I figured I would get myself involved and see where it went. And got promoted about a year and a half later to the head trainer position. And
what team was this?
I started with Colorado. I was with the Rapids. So got to Denver in early 99, was it? Yeah, early 1999. Spent about 9 years there as the assistant, then the head trainer. Left to go to Houston back in '08. So I was with the Dynamo for 10 years. Kind of worked my way up. Organizations were expanding. Was able to get myself into like a director of sports medicine role because we had a academy, we had a women's team. So I was overseeing the hiring of those staffs. And then from there, I moved to Salt Lake back in 2018 to do the same role. And then just 2 years ago, got promoted into my new role.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, so you gave me a whole bunch of things to ask you questions about, which I love. First of all, New York Jets, you said it really opened up my eyes as to athletic training in the professional sports world. What was it that your eyes opened up to? What was it? What was that experience, and what made you just go, oh my gosh, this is the direction I want to go in?
Well, obviously, it's the biggest league in our country, right? I mean, it is the dominant player in pro sports. And so resources are almost unlimited. The professionalism, the drive, the hard work, like everything is like superior there, right? It's back then it was, and I'm sure it still is, it's the league where you try and outwork everybody. You outwork your coworkers. Every coach wants to be the last one there, burning the midnight hours. It's the drive at that level that everybody wants to succeed. And, to see all the resources, to see all of the equipment, to see the facilities, to see, almost an unlimited budget when it came to, supplies or anything that you needed to help the team win was awesome. And so I said, I really want to be in this environment because I had done small schools. I'd come from there, and, I wanted to be at the peak of my profession. And so professional sports is really where I set my goals and looked at some opportunities because I knew that was just a year-long internship. Grateful for that seasonal assistant position. But I knew that I was going to have to move on. And so I looked at various things from baseball to soccer to, even continuing possibly in the NFL Europe. But the soccer one appealed to me because I had played as a kid, still loved the sport. And that opportunity came up to go to Denver, which is a great town, and just kind of grabbed a hold of it and ran with it.
Yeah, fabulous. And then you also mentioned that back in school, at the time you were going to get your certification as an athletic trainer, I imagine it wasn't required to get a master's at that point in time, correct?
No. So I'm of a certain age that I was before this, current generation of entry-level masters. So back then there were two options. You could go to an accredited undergrad program, take the courses, and then sit for the exam, or there was an internship route. As long as you met a certain number of classes that fit within the educational model and you volunteered and did your hours learning. I think back then it was like 1,800 hours of internship experience. If you did that over the course of your collegiate career, you could then apply for the exam. So that's what I did. I threw myself into it. Very fortunate at Point Loma back then. I was a freshman and I was in the training room learning things, right? I didn't know anything. I hadn't taken my first athletic training class, but they let me be in there, see what was going on, ask questions, just kind of soaking it in. So it was actually pretty good. I'm a bit of a visual learner. So being in that environment was better than reading textbooks for me. You could see things and experience it. So when I actually got to those athletic training classes in my sophomore, junior, senior year, I'd seen a lot of the stuff I was reading in the textbook. So it was easier for me to onboard that knowledge and just go, oh yeah, I've seen this already. And it just kind of went from there.
Well, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but these days you can't apply for internships until after you're done with your undergrad. And it's only when you're going for your master's that that organizations like the Houston Dynamo, Real Salt Lake, Oakland A's, or any other sports will say, okay, we can bring you in. Do you find that? Because I had another athletic trainer on, and maybe I misunderstood, but it sounded like internships are not something that the undergrads are doing.
It's getting more difficult, right? If you look at any of the healthcare professions, right? Physical therapy is now a doctorate level degree.
Yeah.
Athletic trainers are now a master's entry level. So it's getting more and more difficult for undergrad students to get experience with the professional team. So I modeled here a similar program to what I had when I was with the Jets. So we have seasonal assistants. When I came in, they had 4 of them, and they were not required to have their degrees, not required to be certified. So we did have a few undergrad students, but as the shift went to master's entry level, we started changing our requirements over the past few years. And we are now at the point where we look for somebody who is ready to graduate, because our season doesn't line up with the school schedule well at all. So we're looking for somebody who's like in their last semester, ready to be certified, or is already done and certified, looking to get their chance to be in pro sports. And so we pay a seasonal person to be in with us, along with our 3 full-time athletic trainers on staff.
And you, speaking of staff, I mean, you've got quite a staff underneath you as the director of sports med and so on. But actually, what is your official title with Real Salt Lake?
Yeah, so my new title is Senior Director of Athlete Health and Performance. And so I oversee not only the medical staff, but the performance staffs for all of our various teams underneath the umbrella of Real Salt Lake.
Which makes complete sense. But you're dealing with the women's team, the academy, as well as the men's MLS team, right?
Yeah, we actually have 2 professional men's teams. We have the Major League Soccer team, and then Major League Soccer formed a new 3rd division, which is called MLS Next Pro. So we have that team as well. And then we have 2 boys residential academy teams on property. And then we're going back into NWSL next year with the return of the Royals. So we'll have essentially 5 teams in our organization.
Oh, man. And with the academy, the 2 teams there, we're talking maybe as young as 14 or 16.
Yeah, we have under 15s and under 17. So some of them will come in at 14 years of age. So we'll have those 2 teams are 25 kids roughly each. So there's 50 there, 20, 24 so at the 3rd division level. MLS is 30, and the women's team, I believe their rosters are 26 or 28. I'm not certain on that.
Wow. And how many of your staff members carry over into all the other teams? Like you yourself, of course, at the top of the umbrella, but how many strength coaches were in your organization? Is there just one director of strength and conditioning who has a couple of assistants, and those assistants are responsible for those other teams? How does it work?
So we actually compartmentalize it team by team. So at the academy level, we have 2 full-time athletic trainers and 1 full-time strength coach. At the 3rd division level, we have 1 full-time, 1 part-time athletic trainer and a full-time strength and conditioning coach. And then at the top level, we have 2 full-time performance coaches. One of them is our director of performance, who kind of is the overseer of all those other folks in the performance realm. Ryan Cotter's been with us for a number of years. Great guy, does a great job with our athletes. So we have all of those individuals. And then additionally, we have a performance dietitian, Brittany Dunn. She's been on your podcast before.
Yes, I was going to say, I hope she's still around with you guys. She's awesome.
Still have her. She's doing a great job. And then we have a number of massage therapists that work for the professional teams, couple full-time, couple part-time. And then we just recently brought on full-time a director of mental performance or mental performance coach. And he does go across all levels. He's the one guy that kind of sees everybody right now.
And what was your decision on that? I mean, is it just something that you realized was something that was missing? Is it something that is trending where all the other teams are going with it? I mean, obviously, I know the importance of mental preparation and performance, but what was it that you decided, okay, we need somebody specific for this role rather than trying to pull information from a performance director and so on?
Yeah, I think it grew organically. The initial idea actually came from our assistant general manager, who wanted somebody for the academy boys, because they're residential, right? These kids are moving away from home, 14, 15, 16 years of age, living in dorms on property, going to our public-private charter school. So they wanted somebody as a counselor to be around for those guys. And that's the initial role that Jordan Johnson filled for us. And so started to do great work with them. I was seeing how he was getting really ingrained with the athletes and helping them out. And we do have a lot of athletes that'll work in our academy, but maybe play up to the third division on the weekends. And so these kids are kind of bouncing between levels. So he was seeing people from different levels. And we got together with management. And I said, look, we need to make this a full-time role for a mental performance coach. And so Jordan's obviously was in the organization. So we put him in that new role and had him start integrating with the different teams. And, you know, that's a combination of things: buy-in from the coaches, buy-in from management. You know, we're doing the long play here, right? He's worked with these academy kids and they're going to move up the ranks. So they already know him. So he's not somebody new when they get to that next level. And we're hoping to slowly develop this over time, that as you come in at a 14-year-old and you meet Jordan, you may be with him for 7-8 years of your career, knowing this guy, trusting him, because that relationship is so important, especially the trust and confidence to interact with that individual.
What's the typical attrition retention rate for these academy players as they move up the ranks? I mean, how many are going to get to the MLS pro level or MLS, you know, the big show? Do you have numbers on that? I mean, what's the process you're doing right now is obviously successful, but to what degree with these players?
Yeah, so we're a club that likes to develop from within, right? We have the academy. We've had it for a long time. It used to be based down in Arizona. They were at an old minor league baseball training ground. But once we built this new facility 6 years ago, we brought them in-house. And the goal is to develop them internally and bring them up to the first team. MLS incentivizes that with some roster rules where they can be a homegrown player for a couple of years, and it doesn't go against your salary cap. It allows you to kind of expand your money. You can spend more money on another player, maybe from a foreign country, when you've already developed this young player that's inside of your system. Every year, there's probably a couple signings. I mean, it's like any other sport. There's a narrowing as you get to the top, right? It's only going to be the top of the top that make it through. But we've made some recent signings, probably 2 or 3 a year for a number of years. And those athletes will not only play potentially for the first team, but also work for our third division, the Monarchs. So they're continue to develop themselves. But we are seeing more and more teenage signings coming on board. And seeing them making their all the way up to the top of the academy, to the top of the pyramid with the MLS team.
And curious about these teams, do they intermingle with one another on the pitch as well as in just life off the pitch?
Yeah, so our academy, like I said, they're residential, so they live on property, so they're around. We'll occasionally call them up for practice if we need a young body to fill a spot, so they'll get to interact with the pros and see how they are. There's a much better mingling between the Monarchs, which is our third division, and Real Salt Lake, because we literally have a shared facility. So our training room and our weight room is in the center, and the locker rooms are on either side. So it's a shared weight room. It's a divided but shared training room as well. So there's a lot of interaction on a daily basis. We usually train around the same time. Players are moving up and down all the time. I mean, we have a WhatsApp chat amongst our staff of like, who's going up tomorrow, who's going down, who's with this team, just to stay on the same page so we know which bodies are going where. But it gives you some flexibility, right? You have the ability to, we've got a bunch of injuries on one team, we need some bodies to come up a level so we can have a normal training session. We have the ability to do that. So that's worked out well for us.
Well, that's a lot more work for you, though, to be so dynamic with the placement and positions of players and not just be committed to this group here or there. So what's that like for your day-to-day? I mean, and here's a real question, is that in the great American machinery, what we typically find is a technician that is incredible at their job. And what do? We just take them out of that job and try to put them in a managerial position so they can reproduce what it is they're really good at. Sometimes people are really good at reproducing those skills with others, but other times you're taking the best part and you're pulling them away. So within the scope of your practice, how much time do you get to be with players, and how much time are you trying to reproduce success that you've had with the team around you?
No, you're spot on. I moving into this role, I did a bunch of reading on management and leadership, and I believe it was a Harvard Business Review that, the foreword of the book was like, congratulations, you're successful at what you do, you've shown well, you've been recognized. now you're being promoted to lead people, and guess what? It's no longer about you. Your success no longer matters. It's all about the people that you work with. And
Yeah.
I really embrace that, because that's my job. My job is to make sure that we have the right people in the right roles, that we are working together as an organization, because the day-to-day grind of a professional team, like, you're literally focused on what's today's task, what's tomorrow's training, what's our next game. Like, everything is just so almost tunnel vision that you sometimes don't see the greater picture. And so I see my role as supporting those technicians, those staff members in their unique roles, making sure we have the right people where they need to be. And then also kind of seeing the overall vision of where we're going. And hey, you may not be aware of this, but we need to, work on this, because for the corporate good, that's where we're headed. So I try to be that, role model, that person that kind of points us all in the right direction, keeps us on the same page, keeps us looking at the grand picture for what we need as an organization.
And are there times still where you can get your hands dirty, so to speak, your hands on an athlete, and whether you're taping or doing ART or anything that you've acquired over the years, is that still part of it, or is that just one of those kind of, hey, here's my opportunity to do what I used to do, let's go?
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. It's funny, some of the athletes kind of joke, they're like, I don't see you do anything anymore. I'm like, well, yeah, I used to run around as the head trainer doing everything, and now you just see me probably in an office having a conversation, answering an email, talking to somebody, doing something. But I try to keep my head in the training room and around the performance area, so I know what's going on with our guys. Obviously, I have an incredible staff of people that are great at their job, who know what they're doing. That's the other thing about leadership, is getting the right people and then get out of their way. And I don't ever want to be a micromanager for the folks that work in our organization. So I try to give them the freedom to do what they are good at. Yeah, I'll occasionally jump in, like, you sometimes have a veteran who's like, hey, can you tape me? I just like the way you tape, and I'll do that every once in a while. But I also have to say to them, look, I'm not traveling on every away game anymore, so you need to be used to the staff. And I try not to undercut my staff and step in and go, well, hey, I'm going to take over here because it's this guy. But I try to stay close to the first team, because obviously that's our biggest program here. Make sure that they're getting what they need, and keeping my pulse on what's going on, in case I get asked the questions from management or ownership, are like, hey, what's going on there? And I need to know those finite details, even if I'm not the one performing those services on a daily basis.
Yeah, I see. Correct me if I'm off the mark here, but you're the creator of processes and systems, taking in the expertise of your team, as well as the accumulated knowledge and experience that you've garnished over the years, to create processes that systematize, but yet create a sense of individual player care at the same time. Is that legitimate?
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal. That's what I'm trying to do in this role. And like you said, I mean, you don't want to tell them exactly how to rehab the hamstring. The general goal is, this is what we want to do, but I'm going to let the individual clinician express their skills and their experience. If there's sticking points, if there's disagreements, we can talk it out. I can put in my years of experience. I mean, I do have a very experienced staff. Our head trainer now for the first team, he's been in the league like 17 years. So he by no means needs to have his hand held. And the rest of our staff has been with us for a number of years at the first team level. So they're a pretty smooth running machine, but we sit down every day. We have a morning talk about our athletes and what the practice is going to look like. That's just as a performance and medical group before we go in with the coaches, and then talk details of, hey, what's training? What are we doing? That's where we give our recommendations, say, hey, look, this guy should only do part of it. This guy's going to be on the side coming back, kind of the nitty gritty nuts and bolts of what our day is going to look like. And then we try to sit down once a week and do like a long-term look at, hey, where are we at for the coming weeks with this guy who's out? When are we anticipating this person being back? How does that fit in with the schedule? Because sometimes your schedule is so busy and brutal, you don't have time to properly integrate them into a training session. So you kind of have to recreate that on your own.
Okay, how about this? If you don't mind, take me through the process from beginning to end, soup to nuts, if you will. You have a player that has to be removed off the pitch because of an acute high hamstring pull. What is that like all the way to return to play? I know it's quite a lengthy process, but just on average, who are you going to bring in terms of your professionals on the team, and what's it going to look like?
Yeah, so like I said, each team's got athletic trainers. We're fortunate we have a dual credentialed athletic trainer, physical therapist on the first team. So those individuals will immediately assess the athlete to see where he's at, figure out what needs to be done. Does it need to be referred to our physician immediately? We have a great hospital partner that has a clinic just down the road from us. So we can get a guy in a car, get an ultrasound, get an MRI within moments if necessary, although we don't often rush into that because we know, imaging within the first 24 hours isn't vital, for a lot of things. It's not going to change the fact that they're hurt. So we have a great physicians group of orthopedic surgeons, sports medicine, non-op doctors that we work with. And then we'll lay out the plan with that individual once we know their diagnosis as to how they're going to get back. And, kind of in the old days, it was you sat on the table and you did your exercises till you were fit enough to then maybe go in the weight room and do something before you went out and the coach, did some stuff with you on the side. But we try now to kind of blend everybody in like right away. So we'll have plans in place the minute they're hurt. They're already in contact with our performance coaches. Hey, what's he going to do to maintain his strength? How can we work around the problem? What things can he do for alternative cardio while he can't run because of this hamstring? So we try to blend that together as quickly as possible because everybody has a unique skill set and ability to help that athlete. And it's not that stepwise progression that we used to have. It's more of a seamless kind of interaction between everybody so that we're all contributing to that athlete's success. And then as they get more and more fit, they're doing more and more on the field. Very fortunate that not only some of my athletic trainers, but some of our performance coaches have a soccer background. They know how to kick a ball. They know how to run drills. They know how to recreate positionally what is needed for that athlete. They can look at those hard metrics of GPS and say, we need this many decels, this many accelerations, this many meters, and build up that profile of the athlete as they're returning. By the time they return to the field, then we can say to the coach, he's ready for partial training tomorrow. So he can do warm-ups with the team. He can do rondos. He can do a little bit of the small possession, but he's out of the big 11s because he's not ready to sprint. And so we can gradually, build them back into the training with coaches who are very accepting of that. I've had some coaches that are like, no, if he's not fit, don't put him on my field. Our current coaches are great about that. Let us blend that back in. And then we try to get them to the point where they're ready to go. And if need be, we can send them to the Monarchs and get a rehab game, if they need some minutes, if that's something that we think is beneficial. Or we can just get them back into the lineup and talk to the coaches about what the minute limits it would be coming off a bench, and then eventually get them back to 90 minutes fit.
And then when it comes to your team, I imagine you have quite a hand in the interviewing process, hiring and releasing, correct?
Yeah, so that is one of the tasks that I have. Everybody is always looking for the next great job, and everybody wants to move up, right? And I say this with no disrespect to anybody who works at that level, but most people don't want an academy job and want to stay there for 25 years. They want to move along. So there's natural progression in people's career movements. And I've always said I'm never going to stand in somebody's way. If they have a better opportunity, I'm going to support them and let them seek that out. So we do have staff turnover. We are looking for people. For me, especially on the medical side, this is kind of where that seasonal position can be a year-long interview. You can see, hey, what's their personality? What are they like? How do they work with individuals? Do they understand how we work as an organization, and do they fit in? Usually that's the first place I look when we have an opportunity at the academy or at the third division level is, hey, internally, do we have somebody that already knows our system, who already works with us that we can just promote? If not, then we do a search. We take a look around. We try and figure it out. So I am involved in the interview process, the hiring, working with our HR, obviously. I try to involve somebody from each team, like whether that's a coach or the performance coach from that level, so that we're all kind of on the same page, because I may not be working with them every day. Somebody will be, and I want to make sure that they're comfortable with that individual as well.
Okay, how about this then? Because of what you just said, I'm wondering about, say, manual therapists. You've
Sure.
got your body workers, massage therapists, but and there's so many different avenues of concentration. We have ART and MAT and NKT, and the letters keep going more than the alphabet.
Alphabet soup.
Yeah, exactly. Are there certain elements, are there certain disciplines, thought processes that do better or do well with a soccer athlete than say other ones? So when you're looking at manual therapists, are there certain kind of certifications that you're like, oh, okay, good, we've got this person, they really know all about ART or whatever it is?
Yeah, so it's funny because soccer is a very worldly sport, right? And around the world, credential levels vary, backgrounds vary. There is a lot more hands-on manual stuff in soccer than other sports that I've seen. And so you have to have people, that are comfortable with that, because there are therapists who are like, hey, I'm an exercise guy. That's all we do is, you're going to do this exercise. I'm going to watch. I'm going to coach you through it. You have to have people that are comfortable doing manual therapy. You also have to have people that are, knowledgeable. So we tend to look for people that have some of that experience, or we try and push them into it with continuing education. There's a number of things that are out there that we find very effective when it comes to treatments. Dry needling is very, very big right now. We use that. Almost everybody on our staff has that. We look.
And I see blood flow restriction. You're very much into that, it seems.
Blood flow restriction is another great thing. That is an excellent tool, not only for early rehabilitation, but for conditioning or keeping guys strong. So we try to hit some of those bigger buckets in terms of what their extra credentialing is before they go off the range and get into some minute disciplines. But yeah, ART is great if somebody's got that. If somebody has obviously our massage therapist has excellent skills. She's been with us a number of years and she's got quality hands. She's often what I call our radar. Like, she'll find things before we know about it, sometimes even before the athlete knows about it. So it's important that she's in our medical meetings telling us what she knows, what she's seen with our guys. But yeah, I mean, even your athletic trainers and physical therapists need to be comfortable with hands-on. If you're the kind of the old school mentality where I don't do massage, well, that's not going to work in soccer, because sometimes they need that on a regular basis. It can lead into more normal traditional therapies, but you better be comfortable with hands-on, better be comfortable with high hamstrings, groins, glutes, things like that, we even have to have that conversation with normal massage therapists when we're hiring them. It's like, look, this is not a clinic. This is not a, wearing long shorts and you're not going to, you work on a muscle attachment, in a sensitive spot, because it's needed for our guys, So yeah, soft tissue skills are paramount. If you want to get into soccer, I would say the more that the better off and more well-positioned you will be.
Yeah, okay. So out of all of these various disciplines, a multidisciplinary approach, and you've just added mental performance for the most part, something relatively new, is there a discipline that is opening up, or that you have your sights on, that you're like, oh, you know what? We should explore this a little bit more? Or do you feel rather complete with the approach that you have right now?
Yeah, I think we're okay. I think one of the things that I'm, kind of encouraging my staff is to look at becoming multidisciplined yourself, right? I don't have a problem with, somebody who is a AT or a PT who gets his CSCS and wants to work in a performance role. Like, I would look at that. That's great. That's good for crossover. That's good for understanding. We have a strength coach who's very good with some manual release techniques that he's learned, and we're comfortable with him using that, right? He's not working as an athletic trainer. He's not replacing somebody, but he's taken a course. He has a certification. He's able to utilize that with some of our athletes. So we're okay with that. So I try to encourage young students when they ask me like, hey, what should I focus on? I was like, you don't want to focus. You kind of want to broaden so you can appeal to more things. I mean, you're seeing, and this, Rocky, you're seeing more and more like PTs who are CSCS working as a performance coach for professional teams. And so yeah. I think that mentality that it's PTAT over here, CSCS over here, and that's it. Like, you've got to knock down those barriers. You have to have that crossover, not only in how you interact as colleagues, but also your training, right? If we're all going to be getting masters and doctorates to get our medical degrees, why aren't we spending our undergrad degrees in exercise science and getting our CSCS? And that's just going to lead you into it. Like, if I had to go back and do it again, I probably would have done that. I would have not done 2 degrees in the same thing. Right.
Well, yeah. And it's great, really valid points you're bringing up. And one thing that we don't speak often of, you brought up Brittany Dunn. Brittany, glad she's on your team. The fueling component of an athlete, there is historically a disconnect between nutrition dietary choices, proper fueling, and performance. And in the medical world, if you become a doctor, you spend, I think, less than 2 weeks in medical school talking about nutrition. And we don't bring that up in terms of the CSCS, or for that matter, personal training or athletic training itself. So if we're going to broaden our experience and knowledge base, I think that is an area that really needs to be delved into, but it's so ever changing. It's this almost juggernaut of a science that I don't even know where to begin. But do you have some of your performance staff or your athletic trainers or physical therapists delving into the fueling component of an athlete too?
Yeah, our head trainer has some interest in when it comes to the supplementation and the proper nutrition, but we include our dietitian in our medical meetings. She's on all of our injury reports. She's looped into everything. So when we sit down in the morning, it's like, hey, Brittany, this guy has a bone injury. And she's already thinking, okay, he needs this supplement. I need to make sure, suggest this food, which will help, because everything contributes to getting that athlete back, right? You can do all the work you want on getting a fracture to heal, but if that kid is not taking on the right nutrients, his body's struggling to lay down the bone that it needs because he's not eating right. So it's a difficult one, right? Because it's hard to say, eat this apple, you'll run 0.2 seconds faster, right? There's not a direct line between those things.
Yeah.
But it is important. We know that it's important, and it's a part of what we do in everything. So yeah, somebody who has that understanding. Brittany's great. She was a former, athlete herself, still competes in rugby. I mean, she understands athletes' needs. She can think like an athlete when it comes to food. And then she also has skills as a chef. So she can also say, hey, look, this is how you should cook things, or you should look for this. So that's kind of those, find a neighboring area to your passion that relates and look into that, and it only strengthens your resume,
Yeah, truly, truly. Okay. Spinning back around to like training, conditioning, blending in the cohesiveness between athletic trainer and performance director or strength coach. One of the major indicators of injury is previous injuries.
Yep.
So we're going to look at a new player coming into organization, get a complete health history, understanding background, and go through an assessment and so on. But let's just say this person has a history of recurring inversion sprains.
Yep.
How is that taken into consideration when developing a player for a first team? I mean, what are you doing with that information in regards to athletic training and conditioning?
Yeah, so obviously we screen all of our athletes when they come in. They do a comprehensive medical examination when they join us. That includes their injury history. Sometimes that's, you got to ask questions because, older athletes don't want to tell you everything. They don't want you to think they're beat up and, a problem. We have access to records if they've been in our league. Our league shares medical information because we work kind of in a single entity concept where the league works together to, develop the league. So we do have those resources. But when they come into us, we'll do an examination, and that can be imaging right away, day one, discussions with the doctors about what they think needs to be done. But then that goes into specific performance testing, and our performance coaches will get our guys through various testing for their muscles, for counter movement jumps. And then we'll also do individual, like handheld dynamometry on injured areas with our medical staff. And then we'll collaboratively come together and say, okay, what do we need to do for this athlete? And it may be, look, he hates doing rehab. Okay, let's talk to the performance coach about sneaking some rehab exercises into his prehab or his warm-up for the lift today, and individualize it to that athlete so that they're getting what they need. It may not have to come from my mouth as the medical guy saying, hey, you've got to do this exercise. It's okay if the performance guy is saying that, if they respond better, right? We joke, some guys don't want to come on our side of the wall into the training room. They only want to be in the weight room. Okay, well, that's fine. They don't know that we're working together behind the scenes to make sure they're getting what they need and putting that in their program. So yeah, we'll individualize that based on their previous history. And then we'll do, a regular assessment of where we're at, whether it's a Nord board or a force frame or our force plates. to kind of see where they are during the year to make sure they're not slipping, below those thresholds that we want for them. And then some of it sometimes is as simple as, hey, go grab that guy, bring him in here and have him do some isometric work on his hamstring on the table. Just a couple reps just to keep that thing prepped and ready to go. I know we've been playing a game every 3 days for 6 weeks. It's been very hard to get intense workouts in, right? But our medical staff does a great job. Hey, game's over, come in, do these exercises. Let's work on your lumbopelvic stabilization. You've had hamstring problems. Let's not let it slip and get too far away. Do a little bit, take that little, I think the popular term now is like micro dosing of exercise. Give them that little stimulus. They're going to get beat up in the game. They're going to get 8,000, 10,000 meters of running. They're going to be tired from that. So you can't do a full hamstring workout after a game, but give them a little bit of something just to keep them going. And so staying on top of it like that is a better way to kind of ensure that you're going to avoid some of those problems down the road.
Yeah. And now we're getting just another month or so where it'll be at mid-season. And how does that change in terms of your day-to-day compared to, say, 6 weeks ago, just getting geared up for the season to begin? How is that? What's your day-to-day looking like in regards to the players, the team, and so on, and the team of professionals? How does your job change as the season progresses?
Yeah, I always joke that MLS is a marathon of sprints. You sprint from game to game, and before you know it, 40 weeks of your year are gone, right? So you do have to keep that kind of long-term focus. And that's, like I said, sometimes, focusing too much on this game, the next game, today's practice, you can miss some of those bigger things. So I try in our meetings to remind people, hey, look, we've got this coming up here. There's a chance for a break. I know the coaches aren't thinking about what we're going to do, during this 2 weekends off, but let's figure out how we're going to do that. And, we're coming out of an intense period. Like I said, we're playing tonight. We've got another game in 3 more days. That's going to be like, I don't know, 12th, 15th game in like 6 weeks or something like that. It's crazy. It's a busy period. So you do scale back some of the things you're doing off the field. Your recovery sessions become a little bit more lighter. You don't, do a full session on a Monday. You just get them on the bikes, get them loose, get them jog, stretch, get them recovered so they can train match day -1 Tuesday to then play on Wednesday. And then you got to recover them for the weekend and then get them back. So I joke right now, we only have really like one full training session a week right now, because it's either a day before the game or the day after. So you do what you can to stay on top of it. Obviously, keep reminding guys the education component's important. Staff will take turns sending out reminders. Hey guys, make sure you're being hydrated. Hey, use the urine stalls with the measuring so we know where you're at. Hey, don't forget, it's going to be hot when you're down in Austin this weekend. Make sure you're drinking up. So little bits of education as you go along, little bits of monitoring, little bits of microdosing those things to make sure you're not missing anything. That's kind of what we do in the middle of the season. And, because it's so busy, you don't have time for those, oh, we're going to work out 3 times a week and play on a Saturday. That's just not going to happen in season.
So more restorative, regenerative in between matches, and maybe one day of training and conditioning. Is that what I hear?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially how we plan it. We bring in a part-time massage therapist in addition to our full-time on that first day back. So that's our regen day. So that anybody who was like 65 minutes or more in the game will start out on the bikes now. It used to be they'd go out and they would jog and then do a little bit of ball work, but we've scaled that back a little bit just because there's so much going on. But it's a light turnover of the legs. If you don't feel like you can go to the field and do a jog and the stretch, that's fine. Stay inside, get work from the athletic trainers, the massage therapists, or the physical therapists. If you're able to go out, do a jog, that's fine. That's really all we're going to do. And then the reserves are training at that time. So they have their stimulus because they haven't played. Then we get into Tuesday, and that's probably it is the day before a game, but it is a chance that the whole group is together. You can get some training in, but there's tactical stuff that's being implemented. Hey, here's what we need to know for our upcoming opponent. Let's practice these set pieces. Hey, they'd like to do this. We're going to change our formation a little bit. Then game day, obviously it's an intense period. They're running 6-7 miles. I got to give credit to our coaches. They've done a great job of rotating our squad, listening to us when we've said, hey, we think a guy needs a break. I know the athletes probably pissed off that we said he's not ready to go. because they're all competitors and they want to play all the time. They don't want to lose their spot. But there are times we've had to, pull the reins back on a guy and say, look, he probably shouldn't start. And the guy's not happy about it. But it's for the long-term goal of you're going to play in another 3 days when this guy who's playing tonight needs a rest. And so, performance, we always talk about what we do, right? Medical and performance to help the athletes. But don't forget, like, a coach can ruin those plans if he doesn't listen to it, or he overtrains them, or, changes the schedule or whatever. So having that triangle of medical performance and coaching on the same page is very, very helpful. And it's the sweet spot that we're all searching for.
Yeah, because I could see how easily from so many different directions you could be viewed as the bad guy. From the athlete who wants to stay out on the pitch, from the coach that needs his star athlete to be on the pitch, from the front office whose ticket sales are dropping because their star player has been benched or is in recovery, and so on. So yeah, you've got a lot of coordinating and communicating to do. How about this though, Theron? Concussions are something that are always going to be a part of sport. And we see it in the NFL, and that's brought a lot of the headlights or spotlights on them. But within the MLS, how do you handle concussions and post-concussion syndrome? Because the players, I've been concussed on several occasions, more than I can probably count, and definitely more than I can remember. No joke intended, but I just wanted to stay up on the mountain. I wanted to stay on the playing field, and it's very hard to try to sit on the bench because you don't have something concrete that, like a sprain or a tear, telling you I can't go. So how do you deal with the concussion protocols and post-concussion?
Well, we're fortunate that things have gotten a lot better in not only our league, but worldwide, right? I remember when I started in this league, like, we still had smelling salts in our pocket and would just wave that under somebody's nose, like, hey, are you feeling better? Like, things have changed so much since I started, for the better, yes. So yeah, we have a league policy that we follow. That starts with educating the athletes in preseason. They have to watch some videos so they understand the importance of it. They have to undergo some baseline testing, and it's several different types of testing. It's a computer test, it's a pen and paper test, it's a physical test. So those are layered into our preseason physicals, so that they are given a baseline so that we know if something does occur, we know how to test and retest. But yeah, there's set protocols now that I think weren't around back in the day. It was just you literally went, do you feel better? You ready to go? You're trusting them and their subjective, reporting, no objective reporting. We're getting better with the ability to sense, what's going on and understanding how long they need to come back. And I think some of those timeframes that are there, as much as athletes hate them, I think they're great because it actually gives us a little bit of breathing room where we go, look, we just have to do this. This is the program. I can't have you get a concussion on Wednesday and clear you Thursday to train Friday to play Saturday. It's just not going to happen. So following those protocols has been very helpful. And the international experts, they get together and they revise that. I was at a medical meeting in London, and they're talking about SCAT 6 coming out here shortly, right? We're doing a SCAT 5 right now for sport concussion assessment tool. Now they've got a new one, and they've got a new in-office one. So, they're evolving those things. So it's helped us with how we care for our athletes. But there are still some of those ones that are problematic. Like, you just can't figure out why this guy doesn't feel better. And, sometimes you really have to figure out the puzzle pieces, and that's sometimes that experience helps doing that. Having good expertise or experts to lean on is helpful. But yeah, they could still be tricky. I mean, I think we've all had one or two cases where it doesn't seem right. Like, I don't know why this guy's not getting better. I thought we did everything. It's been a long time. And sometimes you just got to find out what treatment avenue or assessment or, really figuring out innovative ways to treat what's causing them the problem, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, we're still learning.
Okay, one of my final questions involves flopping.
Okay, yeah.
When you were
We're talking about the NBA Finals, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
When you were on the sidelines for any team for that matter, remembering that you were there for the Dynamos and other teams, so we're not going to name names here in any way whatsoever, even going back to to the university and so on. But when you were an athletic trainer on the sideline and you had players hitting the pitch, going down, at what point in time in your head going, do I really need to run out there, or am I just kind of watching a Broadway production?
Yeah, it's funny. I often say the more rolls, the less hurt they are. If guys are hurt, they usually don't move much, right? Maybe they just roll over once. But I have a funny story. I had a player. He was from Central America, and we were playing in a game. I don't even know where it was. It might have been Champions League. We might have been in Mexico with the Dynamo. We might have been Central America. I'm not certain. He gets fouled, and he rolls 5 times one direction, realizes he's out of bounds, and rolls 3 times more to get back onto the field. And I'm like, there's no way this guy's hurt. Like, you just knew he wasn't hurt. Like, you knew he was just trying to embellish and get a foul called. I mean, I joked about the NBA, but like when people like take a dig at soccer and like, oh, I can't stand the flopping. I'm like, do you watch the NBA? There's plenty of guys taking a dive for a charge and flopping and screaming when they get touched. It's part of the game, right? I think our Hispanic friends love it because it's part of the drama. It's part of the gamesmanship. It's part of the, I'm going to put the referee in a tough position, and make him make a decision. So if you can appreciate those finer little dark arts, it's interesting to watch. But I understand the average American sports fan gets frustrated, like, oh, be tough, take it. I'm like, well, it happens in other sports. You're just not ready to admit it. So
yeah. All right. Well, I see the Arsenal flag on the wall behind you. It's obvious right there. But when it came to World Cup, aside from the U.S., which they did great, actually making it all the way to as far as they did, what team do you typically root for in the World Cup outside of the U.S.?
I don't have a typical team. I really got behind the narrative of Argentina and Messi this year. Like, he's a great player, and for anybody to say he's not the greatest because he hadn't won a World Cup, well, now they can't say that, right?
That's right.
So that was a fun one to watch. Obviously I'm USA through and through. Love our country, love our team. Know some people that work there, and we'll always be supportive of it. But once they were knocked out, it's like, okay, I'm going to get on this Messi train, and it sounds like he might be coming to MLS. So maybe there'll be a chance I get to see him on a field at some point.
Oh, would that be great? And while we're at it, Premier League's coming to the U.S. this season too, so that's going to be quite nice. Do you have any games in the Salt Lake area with the Premier?
No, we don't have any. Most of those guys are like Midwest or East Coast, but those European tours are getting more and more popular. I mean, obviously the fan base is growing in the U.S. Huge. People ask me why soccer's gotten more popular, and I say, number one, the game of FIFA. Kids grew up playing it and they love it, and then also, the English Premier League, it's on TV and people are getting behind it, and you're seeing more and more American owners buying teams around the world, whether it's England or Italy or elsewhere. It's becoming very popular. So America is waking up to the world sport, and I've been fortunate enough to see kind of that growth of our league over that time, and it's awesome. I want to see it continue to grow because it's something I've dedicated my life to, and I want to continue doing for another 25 years if they'll let me,
Right on. Well, final question, and I'll let you go. And I really appreciate your time that you've put aside here. But for the younger audience, which is typically the men and women that are coming up in the ranks for athletic training and physical therapy, advice to them right now?
For me, it's you got to chase your passion. You've got to take those opportunities. I talk to our staff, or I talk to young students that we have, and I say, there's a time in your life to put that grind in, to take those risks, to move away from family, to volunteer for that position. Even if you're going to suffer in the short term, it's the stepping stone to the next thing. And the perfect career, you can try and manipulate that how you want, but sometimes you just got to take what comes to you, build off of it. I like to say, grow where you're planted. If you're there, you do a good job. If you're at a high school, do an excellent job. So everybody says, this guy's great. He's ready for the next level. If you don't do well where you're at, nobody's going to say you're ready for the next thing. So shine where you're at, work hard, reach out, make connections. I mean, I think it's much easier now to make connections through social media than it was back in my day. I mean, I remember handwriting letters. I think I still have a rejection letter from a baseball team saying, no, you don't get an internship, But nowadays it's as much easier to reach out through social media, follow some good people on Twitter, see who they're following. It kind of puts you in the loop of what's out there, and that's a way to just kind of gain traction and go from there. And I'm on social media. People can find me, Soccer Sports Med. I try to interact with people who ask questions, try to be helpful. I've reached that stage of my career where I realize it's not about me. It's about, those that I work with and the next generation. And so if I can help people along their journey, I'm most certainly going to do that.
Right on. Well, I took a peek at your schedule. It looks like you'll be coming out to San Jose in September. I think that's the soonest that the Quakes and Real go against each other. So if I see you at PayPal Stadium, that's going to be a treat for me. And awesome. I can't thank you enough for coming on. So good luck for the rest of the season, and thank you again.
Thanks so much, Rocky. Had a great time.
Well, that's a wrap for this episode of the Zelos Podcast. Tune in next Monday when we have another fantastic guest just like Theron. And there's a lot of information out there, as well as in the archives. We've got over 170 episodes, so scroll back and see if you like soccer, hockey, baseball, whatever. You're bound to find it in Zelos. We'll see you next week.